am Tom Atlee, and I am the director and founder of the Co-Intelligence Institute in Eugene, Oregon. I collect processes, I collect initiatives, and try to paint them into a larger vision of what would be possible in democratic systems that are wise and sane. And I came to this work out of progressive activism. I was on the Great Peace March in 1986, cross-country, LA to DC, 9 months, and it fell apart in the desert and became a self-organized system with no leadership and total leadership, a leaderful organization. And I had my first experiences of collective intelligence on that march and self-organizing systems on that march. And so when I came off of it, I had a whole different perspective on the world than I had before I started it, and started me on inquiries that led into investigating what corporations are doing with collective intelligence and all the processes they use, and then thinking about how that could be applied to democracy. And pretty soon I was full-time, full-fledged into the work that I call co-intelligence. One simple definition is the accessing of the wisdom of the whole on behalf of the whole. Intelligence that takes wholeness and interconnectedness and co-creativity seriously. That's like our whole intelligence, not just our head intelligence, but our intuitive, spiritual, musical, all the multiple intelligences that people have researched in psychology. It has collective intelligence in it. It has collaborative intelligence like Aikido and Judo and jazz bands. It has the larger intelligence, what I call universal intelligence, accessing the intelligences of spiritual domains and the natural systems, things that are larger than us, and resonant intelligence, the kind of vibe that you get being with somebody else and the kinds of new insights that can come out of that, etc. It's not just I'm a lonely person with an intelligence locked inside my head. There's much larger forms of intelligence that we can access, and wisdom is included in that as an expanded intelligence that takes account of more of reality, more of what needs to be taken into account than our normal intelligence is. So those are all forms of intelligence that take wholeness and co-creativity and interconnectedness seriously. I have 2 books on all this subject. One is The Tao of Democracy, which describes a whole pile of different methods and how they could play a role in democracy. And I have a whole theory of how democracy could work as a holistic phenomenon in there. And then I wrote Empowering Public Wisdom, which sort of uplifts it and says we want wisdom, not just collective intelligence. We really need wisdom, and we need it to have power. We need it to actually impact policy and collective behaviors in the society. And here's some ideas about how to do that. The actual trends that you look at in the social world and the natural world, the major trends are not on our side. Climate change, I think, may be either nearing or already past tipping points that'll be very hard to get back from, and the positive feedback loops that'll magnify that are gigantic and powerful. Methane being pouring out of the North Sea where it's been frozen forever, and the melting of the ice caps. The idea that we would melt the ice caps and then talk about how that frees up our ability to mine more oil. I mean, talk about feedback loop. Magnifying feedback loop is insane. The politics is getting insane. I mean, this election is showing the even greater insanity than we have. It's getting worse and worse. Each election becomes more bizarre. And technological developments, the idea that we are creating technologies that could do us in really easily. Global warming and technology are creating the possibilities for lots of new diseases that could show up that we have no way to control. It's peak oil, peak all sorts of things. Lithium batteries. Well, lithium happens to be only in a few places on the planet. A few places in Africa and China. It's like the kinds of geopolitical bullshit that's going to happen as a result of our way our economy works is just gigantic. And the fact that there are really positive alternatives to all of that, and people just don't know them and can't do that shift, and the system is built to pull them away from the changes that are needed. If you're intelligent, you're able to see what's going on around you, and if you're doing something that is causing disaster in your life, you would tend to shift that. That's what intelligence is for. It's like things go, the old story of, stepping in a hole is not, is not stupid, but stepping in the same hole twice and 3 times is very stupid. And we are doing that 100 times, it's like, so where is our collective intelligence? How do we collectively take in information? I mean, a lot of science and news media and all that are ways we collectively take in information. How do we reflect on that information? How do we make decisions based on that information and our understandings that we derive from it? How do we act together? How do we observe the results of our actions and take in new perceptions and reflect? It's a whole cycle of intelligence that makes our inner world congruent with the outer world. How aligned are we to what's actually there? And individually, we are way more intelligent than we are collectively, because the systems are so messed up. The systems we have to perceive with collectively are messed up. The systems we have to reflect with are messed up. The systems we have to make decisions and to take actions collectively are all messed up. So politics and economics are the systems that we use largely to shape how we behave in the world. And both of those are stacked against us. So I go, this is serious mess. If you just think mechanistically, we've had it. There's no question about it. Where I go for my hope when I would look at all that stuff and I get despairing is the fact that we live in a complex, chaotic living system where small changes can have a profoundly large effect, the supposed butterfly effect that people talk about. And we aren't in control of that. And that doesn't mean that small effects are going to be positive. A lot of small effects can be very negative. But if we can put our knowledge and our will and our action into enriching the field with positive possibilities, there is a chance, I don't know how big it is, there's a chance that the fact that things are getting bad will stimulate the energies that are needed to make them good. It's like the hitting bottom. The alcoholic hits bottom and their life is ruined, and then they go to AA. That's what I feel at a social level. I watch, one of my favorite sayings, things are getting better and better and worse, faster and faster simultaneously. And those are intimately related. I mean, the fact that things are getting worse and worse inspires more creativity, and more organizing, and unfortunately more apathy and more all sorts of other things too. And I just try and put my life into, generating positive possibilities and pointing out, hey, we could do this. We do have the capacity to generate collective wisdom already. It's a little weak, and we could ask ourselves how to make it stronger and how to make it more influential and how to make it more widespread. So that's part of my activities with NCDD nowadays, are trying to invite NCDD people into an inquiry about how to make democracy wiser. So maybe we'll make it. Well, in the political realm, we have a tool I call a Citizen Deliberative Council, and it's based on the jury model. You're taking a randomly selected cross-section of a community or a state or a country with a couple dozen people, and you are giving them a privileged form of citizenship. You're giving them really good information, balanced information. You're giving them access to experts. You're giving them facilitation to be able to hear each other and to think well together and to come up with something that is of service to their community or their country. Being able to do that for many issues, doing that regularly, having that kind of practice become as characteristic of our democracy as voting is. Right now we think democracy is voting. This is a deliberative form that could be used anywhere. We have in Oregon Citizen Initiative Review, they have a little group of 24 people used to look at a ballot initiative and to review it and tell the voters what they found. That kind of thing. You could have them interview candidates, say what they found when they interviewed the candidates, particularly if this is done publicly. Has a very profound effect on a larger population. A few times it's actually been done publicly. people have been shown through the media who these people are, and the people can watch how these people shift as they go through this process. And they come up with something that's like, whoa, this is much better than what we hear from the politicians. Practically always it's better than what you hear from the politicians and the pundits. And then to have that given out to the larger community, to the media, to the, to the politicians, whatever, ordinary people would demand to hear what councils of we the people have to say about the issues, that they're sick of politicians and partisans throwing biased spin messages at them. And they want to know what their compatriots have come up with when they really listened to each other and knew what they were talking about. There are so many issues. There's so many politicians. There's so many of these things. And we're supposed to, individual citizens are supposed to decide this stuff. Individual citizens should say, we want somebody who really represents us, who's really us, who is like us, and have them do citizenship work. To me, the way people would be convinced to participate in this is through examples, and that's, you were talking about doing videos and showing people examples of this stuff. Most people have never seen it. People, ordinary people, participate in what I consider some of the most degraded, inadequate conversational processes that go for dialogue and deliberation. And they're absolutely thrilled. They've never had an experience like this, and it's like, people just don't have that experience. So you give them the experience, or give them like what they did in Maclean's magazine in Canada. Pick 12 people who represent the diversity of Canada, and then profiled them all in the magazine, and then they give you a blow-by-blow account of what happened during the 3 days these people were talking about the problems of Canada. And they ended up coming up with those 4 pages of suggestions about what to do in Canada when it was really divided. Quebec's trying to secede, and the people, the native people, are going, this is our land, and whatever. There's lots of tensions in Canada, and they came up with this incredible solution, these solutions to these things. And Maclean's published 40 pages. Whoever heard of 40 pages on anything, National News Weekly about this, and also it was covered by Canadian TV, and they had an hour-long documentary about it. And it generated massive amounts of conversation all across Canada for a couple of years. And that kind of thing, once people know that exists, there's a natural impulse to want more of it. This is a different kind of politics than we usually see. If Maclean's had done this every year, this is in 1991 they did this, if Maclean's had done this every year, Canada would probably be a very different country than it is now. Each year the politicians would respond in whatever inadequate way they did, and the next time they took a scoop of randomly selected people, or people that represented the differences in Canada, and they got talking, and they'd go, hey politicians, you're not listening to the people. Suddenly there's a voice for we the people, a voice of the whole in the conversation, which you look around, there's no place you can turn in our political conversation for a legitimate voice of the whole. Hello. We have the capacity to generate that voice and bring it into the political conversation. And once it's there, people will start to want more of it, because it makes sense, so much more sense than what we have now.